I'm very excited to welcome Wayne Monteith today, who is the FAA Associate Administrator for Commercial Transportation. Welcome, Wayne.
It's really great to be here with you today. Wish I could be there in person, though.
Oh, I wish you could be here as well. I'd like to start with talking about what it is the FAA does and what your role is within the FAA.
Great question, and it's one I get asked frequently. Why is the FAA involved in space, and in particular, commercial space transportation? But it's really a natural offshoot when you think about it. And so I fall under Title 51 of the U.S. Code, and I have really a dual mandate. Number one, protection of public health and safety during an inherently dangerous endeavor. Also protecting national security and foreign policy interests of the United States under commercial space transportation. And finally, what is unique to my organization that is not part of the rest of the FAA is that I'm also tasked with encouraging, facilitating, and promoting the U.S. space industry. And so we regulate all U.S. space launch companies, whether they launch from the United States or anywhere in the world.
Can you tell us a little bit about the AST?
I sure can. So AST actually stands for it's our shorthand for the FAA's Office of Commercial Space Transportation, and really our genesis began in 1982 with the launch of the first commercial launch, which was Conestoga 1. And actually, a company that was started, one of the co-founders was former astronaut Deke Slayton. And what they learned in 1982 was the hardest part about launching the rocket was getting permission to launch. And so there was no construct, regulatory or otherwise. They didn't even know who they needed to talk to. And oddly enough, they even had to coordinate with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms because they were launching a rocket which had explosive capability. And so out of that kind of mess of trying to get permission to fly, Congress stood up my office, originally under the Department of Transportation in 1984. And then we licensed our first launch in 1989. So just 5 years later, first commercial launch. And in 1995, my office moved from the Department of Transportation to the FAA. And primarily, that was because of the coordination and the work that needed to be done to launch through the airspace in the United States. So we've got to get, once you get safely off the ground and let's say 1 foot, now we got to get you safely through the airspace. So it just made sense to combine those organizations together.
So you talked about starting back in the 1980s, but I'm assuming it's got a lot busier in the last few years. Can you tell us a little bit about the role you've played in the first human orbital flight from the US back in 2020?
Well, I can, but I'm gonna do the I'll riff off your first part of your question and what we've seen changing. So this month, I would expect this month we'll hit our 400th licensed launch, FAA licensed launch. Interestingly, to get to number 300 took almost 30 years. From 300 to 400, we'll do in about 2.5 years. So incredible change in the cadence in the industry. And if you look back just a decade ago, in 2011, we only licensed one launch all year. In 2016, we licensed 11. So we went from launching one a year to the middle of the decade to launching about one a month, to this year, we're probably going to hit an average of one per week. So incredible changes in the industry when you look at cadence. And that is also enabling the commercial human spaceflight realm as well, because we have more reliable vehicles launching more often to space, which means then your price point comes down, which then kind of opens it up. And so we've got Virgin Galactic, which launches from Spaceport America on the precipice or verge of being able to launch with paying passengers, or what we call human spaceflight participants. And I can talk a little bit what the nuances there a little bit later. But then we also have companies like SpaceX that are now taking astronauts to space with NASA right now to orbit, or an orbital regime. And we're involved in that. So last year we saw 2 of those flights. The first one was with Bob and Doug when they went up, and that was NASA's final certification mission. And then we, licensed Crew 1, the 4 astronauts that went up to the station that actually just came back from the station recently as well, shortly after the Crew 2 launch, which the FAA licenses also.
So you talked a little bit about Virgin Galactic, who will be launching from Spaceport America. And we often say we are an FAA licensed commercial spaceport. What does that role really involve? What does it mean to be FAA licensed? And how will you be working with Virgin Galactic on that?
So first off, being a licensed spaceport makes you unique. There are only 12 in the entire nation. Only 12 FAA licensed spaceports in the entire country. Making Spaceport America even more unique, you have the distinction of being the only spaceport licensed for both horizontal and vertical launch activities. So only one, you are the only one in the entire nation. And actually, I'm pretty sure you're the only one in the world suitable for both horizontal and vertical launch operations. And what the difference is Virgin Galactic's launch concept is you take off from a runway, in this case with a mothership or White Knight 2, and you have a spaceship underneath you, Spaceship 2. And you go to altitude and then you drop it and it goes off to space. So that's a horizontal operation, different from vertical, which is, think like the old Saturn V type model where you're shooting straight up. And again, Spaceport America, very unique in that they're the only one licensed to do both, which is actually pretty cool. And so what do we do? So from a spaceport perspective, number one, we work through a multi-year licensing process. And the bulk of the licensing process deals with 2 things, environmental and safety. And of course, we want to get both of those right. And environmental can be everything from how you impact, potentially hazardous materials and waste in construction, to Spaceport America, the view shed, as we call it, the view, to make sure that it's not obtrusive, so we don't ruin the view of that just absolutely gorgeous landscape down there. And so we watch for that as well. And then once you get a license, we conduct inspections. We make sure that you're still being safe, and we know you want to be safe. But it's our job as a regulator just to make sure that you continue to stay focused on safety and you continue to stay focused on the environment as well. And then finally, once you get a customer in there, like in this case, Virgin Galactic, now we work directly with that launch operator to make sure they're doing the same thing. Environmentally, they're safe and they're sound and they're doing everything they're supposed to be doing, but also protecting the public as well and making sure that none of their operations endanger or unduly endanger or risk the general public.
That's a really great explanation. Could you let us know what the evolution is of your office and how do you interact with other federal agencies like NASA or the Department of Space Commerce, for example?
So we are part of what I call whole of government. It's an effort that is critically important to the success of the industry and our role in public safety. And so we work very, very closely particularly with the Department of Defense, the U.S. Space Force and the Air Force, Department of Navy, as a matter of fact, and NASA. Now, we also work with Department of Commerce and some of the other government agencies. But the reason we work so closely with the Department of Defense and NASA primarily is because we're really in the launch business. And so it's twofold. Number one, make sure we have common safety standards and safety requirements so that companies don't, let's say, try to launch from Spaceport America, and then they want to launch, let's say, from Cape Canaveral, and they have to do a completely different set of safety requirements. So by having one standard, one common group of safety requirements, it's a lot easier for these companies to move around and be successful in multiple locations. The second thing that we want to do is make sure that we don't have unnecessary duplicative government requirements. And the way I would describe this is at one time until recently, if you were launching from Cape Canaveral, you would have to, as a launch company, you would have to abide by OSHA standards, safety and health standards. You would have to abide by Air Force ground safety standards, and then you would have to abide by FAA ground safety standards. All of them were very similar and in some cases identical, but you still had to go through all three. It doesn't make any sense. At the end of the day, we just want you to be safe. So by eliminating the duplicative parts of those, as a launch company, it saves you money, saves you time. And as a regulator, it saves us time that we don't have to go and look over the shoulder, say, of the Air Force or now the Space Force, and make sure that you're actually being safe in ground operations. So really a symbiotic relationship as we work through all of these different regulatory constructs to make sure that you can launch safely and you can launch freely.
So you were the commander of the 45th Wing and director of the Eastern Range of the Space Coast over in Florida. What has your experience running the busiest spaceport taught you about the role of spaceports and the future of commercial aerospace, particularly a commercial spaceport like Spaceport America?
Well, first off, I'll tell you, as a little boy at heart, there was no better job to have than running a spaceport, because you're launching rockets, and I got to see the evolution of what our industry is going through now while I was there at Cape Canaveral. And we went from launching on average about every 6 weeks or a historical average about every 6 weeks to being able to launch multiple times in a single week. And so in my 3 years there, I was actually responsible for 66 launches over the course of 3 years. And each one is, while similar, each one is unique, each one is exciting. We also had 23 booster landings. And I'll tell you, my best launch was what we dubbed the launch of Turtle 1. And that was actually releasing a injured green sea turtle back into the ocean, which gets me to why the environmental part of all this is critical as well, because there's no point in going off world if there's nothing to come back to. And so all of these play in together. Now, as I look at spaceports in general, number one, I think they're vital. Number two, I think they're part of our critical national infrastructure. We've got to be able to get to space. We've got to be able to get safely to space and back from space. And what I would say is when I look to the future and where I see this industry going, I see that we need more. And so, like I said, we have 12 licensed spaceports. Only 5 are actually operating right now. When I look in my crystal ball, I think we're going to need more spaceports. But most importantly, we've got to take care of the spaceports that we have today. Those are the foundation of anywhere that we continue to go in this endeavor. And as the spaceports themselves, you've got to have a great place to launch from, which you do in New Mexico. But you also have to have the right people. You've got to have the right cadre of folks, everything from, quite frankly, engineers to marketing. You've got to be able to, do the engineering part, which is the safety analysis, and making sure that you've got the right commodities, or what we call the fuel for the rockets, and you do that safely. But you also have to do the marketing part well, because you're actually trying to capture a global market. And so all of this plays in together so that we continue with the United States' global leadership in this transportation sector. So, I see spaceports as being part of our national critical infrastructure. And New Mexico is great because you have tremendous support from your state elected officials as well, to help you maintain your unique capabilities and offerings.
Going back to your experience, what do you see as the future of human spaceflight from US and across the globe?
First off, once the business model is proven, and that's with any endeavor. And so one of the coolest things about what Virgin Galactic is doing now, they're doing they're doing some science, they're doing what some folks would call space tourism, but I think that's just the beginning. Once you can demonstrate that there is a viable business concern there, the next logical step is destination-to-destination travel, or what some refer to as point-to-point travel. And that really opens up the aperture for what you can do and who's coming into the industry. And so if you could get, say, from Las Cruces to Sydney, Australia in an hour to an hour and a half, boy, I think that just completely changes the dynamic of the business environment. And it also, what companies like Virgin Galactic are doing, they're opening up the magic and the majesty of space to the rest of us, so that we can actually experience what previously has really been the realm of professional government astronauts. And that is just super cool. Now, when you have companies like Virgin Galactic are doing such a tremendous job, and because they're a publicly traded company now, they have to file with the Security Exchange Commission on where they think they're going. And from the documentation I've seen so far, Virgin Galactic alone is looking to be able to do well north of 200 flights a year. Wow, you talk about big business, and you talk about a big boom to southern New Mexico. So you get all this excitement, and what that excitement drives is not just opportunity for investors and opportunity for folks like you and me to fly, but it also lays the foundation for the future of our workforce. STEM activities, and it's one thing to watch a launch on television. It's quite another to be there in person when you see this, and that's how you hook our youth in elementary school, in intermediate school or middle school, I think they call it here, to high school, to college, and you get them hooked into this and going, engineering is hard, but it's cool, and the opportunities are fantastic. And if you thought about it, I way back in high school, I was a private pilot, and I loved aviation. But if I had a choice between being a private pilot or an airline pilot and being a rocket pilot, I can tell you which one I would choose, hands down.
This brings me to my next question. How did you get involved in aerospace?
Well, mine was kind of a long, meandering journey, but like I said, the first part was aviation. So when I grew up in Hawaii, and I lived at Hickam Air Force Base, and they had a runway down there, and you could actually, from the base, you could go to the end of the runway, you could sit, you could watch planes taking off and landing. Everything from the big jumbo jets to F-4 Phantoms that were flying air defense. And it just fascinated. So as soon as I was eligible, my best friend and I, his father took us through flight school, ground school, and in-flight training. We both got our pilot's licenses. I went off in one direction, he went off in another, flying for the Air Force. Unfortunately, my eyes weren't good enough to be an Air Force pilot. And so while I was in college, though, I was really super excited about doing math and physics. But after a couple of years, I realized, and I went to University of New Mexico. And so, but after a couple of years, I realized that I was probably not going to make enough to raise a family without a PhD in physics or mathematics. And so then I kind of shifted over to computer science, and then eventually went into ROTC. And what they really needed was a career field that wasn't computer science or physics at that point to get to what I wanted to do, which was operations. And so I quickly shifted and figured out a degree I could have finished in 2 years, which was geography, and did my focus was on remote sensing and climatology. And so I thought I would actually build satellites for the Air Force when I came in. Instead, though, I ended up in the operational world and started in the missile business early and eventually transitioned into the rocket business, and have not regretted a single choice on that journey. So I've actually been in the space business for about 30 years now, and over 3 decades now. Of that, 29 years was in the Air Force, and I chose the Air Force because I come from a family of Air Force veterans. And I love it. I love what I do today. I retired from the Air Force in December of 2019, or December of 2018, rather. And I started with the FAA just 6 weeks later. I know I expected to stay retired for at least a year, but this job was perfect for my skill set. And it keeps me in the rocket business.
Thank you so much for your service. It's really lovely to hear that you've gone in a slightly different direction to a lot of people that start off as engineers and get into aerospace. So it's nice to be able to showcase a different pathway in. Can I go back a little bit to your time in New Mexico? Could you tell us a little bit what it was like being at UNM and being a Lobo?
First off, I'll tell you, it was a great experience. And probably the top takeaway, I mean, I have to be careful how I say this, from my time at UNM, is I met my bride. And so we are just getting ready to celebrate our 40th anniversary coming up here. And so for me, UNM is absolutely a special place. And I still have family. Actually, my mother and my siblings moved from Hawaii to New Mexico because they came out for my wedding and loved it. Or fell in love with it and moved to New Mexico. So New Mexico is a special place in my heart. And my wife was actually born in Santa Fe. And so New Mexico may be one of those places, or is certainly on our short list for where we're going to retire. But UNM was a great school. Tremendous engineering school, tremendous business school, tremendous medical school. And so I have exceptionally fond memories of my time at UNM. And I can tell you, I have dear friends who are Aggies as well. So the educational institutions in New Mexico are just top notch, and I think you can see that if by nothing else from the Spaceport America Cup competitions. I think the last in-person one you had was in 2019, with I want to say 150 or so different organizations represented. And I can tell you, 2 of the top 10 teams were from New Mexico. Number 4 was UNM, and number 6 rather was New Mexico State. I think they're the Astro Aggies or the
Atomic Aggies.
The Atomic Aggies. So tremendous representation, and I think speaks a lot to the engineering. Or the capability of the engineering schools at both of those fine universities.
Yeah, we're really proud of both of them being part of the Spaceport America Cup. And we actually created a cup just for the local universities to compete in called the Chili Cup. And we're really proud that the Lobos won in 2019. Going to the Spaceport America Cup, what do you think the importance is of having competitions like that and accessibility to students?
Again, I would take it back to what I talked about and actually being able to see a rocket launch. You probably would not be shocked at the number of folks in my organization who started out with ST's rockets, to include me. You know, the little ones, and quite frankly, I've done it with my grandkids. You know, let's take out and let's launch rockets and show you how it worked. And when I was the commander of the 45th Space Wing down in Florida, we did that as well with the local elementary schools. And I would go out there and serve as the launch director. So kind of reenacting my role on console as the final thumbs up, thumbs down, go, no go authority. And we do it for these kids launching rockets, but you get them excited. And so you start out, at that level with these little Estes rockets that'll go a few hundred feet. And then you get up to the America's Cup or the Spaceport America Cup, where you're launching them up to 30,000 feet. Wow. And so, as you can imagine, that's a little bit bigger rocket, but it's amazing how excited folks get about that. And how excited they get not only about just seeing their rocket fly, but being able to talk to other folks, other enthusiasts. And then, of course, you have the competitive part as well. And I'm glad to see that UNM won the Chili Cup. There's always a little friendly competition, and it doesn't always have to center around football and basketball. Which was always a big event, particularly on the basketball side. But I think it's a tremendous avenue, particularly if you're not really sure what you want to do. As you're going through, whether it's high school or college, you're not sure you want to get into this because, as I mentioned up front, engineering is hard. It just is. But I can tell you, in my organization, we've got mechanical engineers, I got computer scientists, computer engineers, chemical engineers, electrical engineers. I've got some of the other core competencies. Like I said, mine is geography. I've got political scientists. I've got folks with business degrees in our organization. About half of my folks have masters. And I even have just over 5% of my team have their PhDs. But what's most exciting for me when I look at the future is this year we're bringing in 6 fresh outs, folks who are just now graduating from college. We've got our first 2 arrived, and we've got 4 more on the way. And so we're going to bring them right in. We also have intern programs. And one of the, and sometimes folks look at internships as goes, I'm not really sure. But I can tell you what, we do have one, what I would call a famous intern that came through my office. And that is Gwen Shotwell, the Chief Operating Officer of SpaceX, probably the most recognized, not only one of the most recognized space entrepreneurs, but certainly female space entrepreneurs. But Gwen Shotwell was an intern in the Office of Commercial Space Transportation when she was first getting started. So it's really cool. And events like this Spaceport America Cup just feed right into that and that excitement.
I love that story. I think that's a really cool one to be able to say that she's been through your office. What advice would you give to people that are looking to start their careers in aerospace, given you come from a slightly different background to most that go through university engineering and that way through?
Probably the best piece of advice I could give is work hard and stay flexible. If you were to look across my organization, I'd be willing to bet no 2 of us have the same path to get to where we are. And so flexibility comes in a couple different ways. Number one, don't believe that there's a single path to success. The other thing that I would say on the flexibility part, don't just set your sights on that if you want to come into this endeavor, that you can only go to work for private industry. One of the things that when I start talking about opportunities in my organization, I can't compete with some of the sexiness of private industry. I certainly can't compete with the sexiness of NASA. And I can't compete with the money, mostly on the private industry side. But what our organization can provide that no one else can is a full spectrum view of the entire industry. And not just from the rocket side, but also from the satellite and the payload side, and now from the human space flight side. So even if you were to work with us for 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, you are so much better positioned to go out to industry and make a far, far bigger contribution and be rewarded for your contribution for the time that you spend with us. And the hard work, of course, and which goes with any endeavor, but particularly with engineering. It's just not easy. And so you got to stick to it. And all it takes is work. I used to tell folks that my goal was to at least appear to be the smartest person in the room. And it wasn't because I was the smartest person. It was because I studied and I prepared to make sure that I knew what was going on around me. And it's just those things take work. And you can't take it for granted that you're just going to get a trophy for showing up. It's actually competitive. When we have a job opening, I might have 5 to 10 applicants for a single opening. And so you got to be prepared. You got to work hard. And you got to be flexible. And my helpers, you can probably hear them in the background. I have 2 rambunctious chihuahuas that are supervising me today. And so hopefully they're not too distracting.
Not at all. We're all in this work from home situation, which is why the Spaceport America Cup is virtual this year. So we completely appreciate your time today, Wayne. And thank you so much for everything you're doing. And hopefully we can invite you back to the Spaceport America Cup in the future, and you can come back down to New Mexico and see what we've got going on for ourselves.
I would absolutely love to, Alice. I appreciate that, because I'll be honest with you, there is no finer green chili in the world than Hatch.
Absolutely.
And as a matter of fact, my wife and I, both being Lobos, our alumni association actually ships Hatch green chili out to the Washington, D.C. area. So we get our bushel every year and freeze it so that we can have fresh Hatch green chili all year long. And so we absolutely miss it. And so now I've got to learn more about the Chili Cup.
Absolutely. So yeah, do come back, and we'll make sure that all the students get the opportunity to try some Hatch green chili as well when they come to the Spaceport America Cup in 2022. Thank you so much, Wayne.
Thanks, Allison. And again, thank you so much for having me on and giving me the opportunity today.
We really appreciate it. Thank you.